Hi, I'm Michelle, the Irritable Vegan. I'm here to share my vegan low FODMAP journey and hopefully take some of the BS out of IBS. Now today I'd like to share with you some pantry staples and recipes for using up whatever you have to hand. Now I'm going to try and make these tips as general as possible so that they apply to every vegan low FODMAP kitchen whenever you might be watching this, but I also want to make it specific enough that it's going to be of some real help to you during these very unusual times that we find ourselves in. Now before we begin, I just want to say that in no way am I encouraging you to rush out and buy everything that I'm going to show you today. Rather, what I want you to do is think about experimenting with possibly the things that you find at the back of your cupboard that you may not have had the confidence to use before, or that you may not be overly familiar with, and also to come up with maybe some new ways of using up ingredients that you may find yourself needing to cook with day after day after day. Practically everything that you see here today are items that I already had in stock. And that's just due to the nature of the types of videos that I make here on YouTube and also to my normal eating preferences. I didn't purposely go out and buy any of these things solely with the intention of making this video, and everything I'm going to show you today are things that I use on a weekly, if not a daily basis. I last visited my local Aldi just over a week ago, and I have to say they were fantastically well stocked, and I really do think they're doing a marvellous job. Here in the UK, we've had some strict measures put in place to avoid the likelihood of people panic buying, and I for one am genuinely really grateful for those measures, even though they came a little bit too late in my opinion. So please make sure that wherever you are, wherever you're watching from, you're taking advice from your local government and you're acting accordingly. So with all that being said, let's get into it. Before we get started, I just want to explain a little bit more about how this mini-series is going to work. This was originally filmed as one video but ended up being way too long, so I decided to break it up into sections. Each section will feature different types of pantry staples with low FODMAP tips and recipe ideas for how to make the best of them. I'm hoping to release one section per day for the next week, so by the end of the week we'll in effect have an entire pantry staple tour broken down into sections. By doing it this way, it's going to be much easier for you to find the section that applies to the ingredients that you have available. Now, because this was intended to be one video, each section will feature the same intro and outro, and that's because each section in the series needs to work as a standalone video. Because some people may only ever watch one episode, it all needs to make sense. If you'll be watching more than one video in the series, and I really hope that you do, I'll pop a timestamp in the description box so that once you've seen the intro on the first video, you can skip straight to the content on the rest. The only thing that you do need to know is that the video clips playing over this part of the intro will change depending on what we're talking about. So if you prefer seeing some visual inspiration for recipes, you might still want to watch this part. As the series progresses, make sure that you check the description box, because as each video releases, I'll be leaving a link to it below, and also the recipes, videos and resources that I link to will change to reflect the ingredients featured each day. I hope all that makes sense, and I really hope you find this series helpful. And now, let's get into it. Next up, we've got noodles. These can be a great addition to a main meal, or they can be a meal in themselves. And something like a rice vermicelli noodle is FODMAP free, eat according to appetite. I did actually pick up these last week in Aldi, and I was really surprised that they actually had a lot of these in stock. And these are actually, although they look quite different from the vermicelli rice noodles, these are actually just exactly the same thing. All they're made out of is brown rice flour and water. So even though they look different, there's actually nothing in there to suggest that they wouldn't also be eat freely and free from FODMAPs. So those are two similar types of noodles, but they do look different, and they would obviously give a slightly different texture just because of the difference in shape. Like I say, my Aldi had lots of those in stock, so if you've never tried something like that, if you're used to having the vermicelli noodles, it might be worth keeping an eye out for something like this. Also, a lot of people don't realise that soba noodles, which are actually made from wheat and buckwheat, actually have a FODMAP safe serving of 1/4 cup or 90 grams, which is really quite a generous portion. So a lot of people aren't aware of that, and these are the soba, the stick type noodles. And again, quite good because they've got quite a different, I would say, a chewier texture than the other types of noodles. And just to give a little bit of variety. My favourite way of using noodles is to actually crush them up. So I'll crush them within the packet, really nice and small, and then I really like adding them to soups and broths. They can be used in ramen dishes, they can be used as a spicy Alaska soup with a canned coconut milk base. I like to use them as a main meal in stir fries, so with whatever veggies you have to hand, and also they can be added into salads. So whip up a quick dressing with peanut butter, soy sauce, sesame oil, a little splash of maple syrup, and eat them cold in a salad or in a grain ball. If you've never actually tried cold noodles before, something like this flat noodle would work really well, and I'd really recommend it if it's something that you've never tried in the past. Moving on from the noodles, we have pasta. Now I don't really want to talk a lot about pasta because I know that in the current situation it's something that a lot of people are probably going to find quite hard to get hold of. The only reason I do want to mention it is that some people may not be aware that regular wheat pasta actually does have a FODMAP safe serving of 1/2 cup or about 74 grams cooked. Now, obviously, if you need to avoid wheat or gluten for medical reasons, then this wouldn't apply to you. But unfortunately, what seems to have happened is that once all the regular pasta has sold out in the supermarkets, people have moved on to the gluten-free pasta, which unfortunately means that the people that do tend to buy gluten-free or the people that need gluten-free aren't able to get hold of it. So if at all possible, if you can use regular pasta, then I really do advise that you do. It isn't a huge serving size. It's not going to make you a full main meal, but again, added to something like a stew, like a soup, like a salad, it's just going to help bulk it out, add a few extra calories, add a bit of bite, a bit of mouthfeel, and just make it a much more well-rounded meal. So please, if that's something that you haven't experimented with yet, it might be a really good time now to get over your fear of wheat pasta and starting off with a very small recommended quantity of 1/2 cup of cooked pasta and see how you go. So there you have it. Now I've really tried to make sure that all of these tips apply to your vegan low FODMAP pantry whenever, wherever you're watching this from. But obviously at this moment in time, I really hope that these tips are gonna serve you well. Please take care of yourself and your family, buy only what you need and what you're realistically gonna use over the coming weeks. I think we can all agree that our retail workers at the minute are doing a hell of a job. Please let's not make their job any harder than it needs to be. I'm pretty certain that most of them would much rather be at home, safe and sound with their loved ones. Please reach out to me in the comments below to share your tips with the rest of our little community and also to ask for any recipe advice, any meal ideas or inspiration that you may need. You can check out the other videos and playlists that I have available. I really think that some of them are going to be useful to you now and in the future. As always, thanks so much for watching and I'll speak to you soon. Bye!